All right. Welcome to Art Salon. We're going to be, well, it's actually Salon to Art with Anish Kapoor. And we're going to be talking about his sculpture and his artwork. My name is Elizabeth Goodwill. I'm the education director here at Art Center Sarasota. And my co-host is Judy Just.
Hi.
All right, so Anish Kapoor, born 1954. He's known as a UK, United Kingdom sculptor out of London. He was born in Mumbai, India. His mother was Jewish and his father was Hindu, which caused a bit of a dichotomy in how he connected to the world. He was living in Mumbai at that point, and then as he got older, he did end up going to Israel and moving in with one of his brothers and living there. But it was kind of that he was torn between which culture does he belong in, or is he a part of one or the other? And that dichotomy and that duality ends up showing up in his artwork. And Joyce is here. Okay. And oops, sorry guys. So he decided at the age of 19 that he was going to become an artist. Now, before that, he had done 6 months of engineering. He's like, I'm gonna become an electrical engineer like my father and my brother. And he found that math was not his strongest point after 6 months and decided to be an artist instead. which was really kind of an interesting change. But then he decided to go to England. He attended Gormley College of Art, and then did his master's work out of Chelsea School of Art and Design. Joyce, mute you. All right. And it was in 1991. He was still making work. He was teaching. He was, has been creating art. But in 1991, he won the Turner Award, and that really kind of changed his life. If we talk about the word pivot right now, that's when he pivoted, and he was boosted to international recognition and fame, and has been there ever since. And so this is actually a tour of his studio that they did not too long ago that I thought would be an interesting thing to watch.
He designed the Orbit Tower in the Olympic Park, has exhibited in Tate Modern's Turbine Hall.
We're not seeing it, Elizabeth. We're seeing your screensaver.
And the Chinese artist Ai Weiwei. The Turner Prize winning sculptor Anish Kapoor sells his work. Millions around them.
There we go.
Better?
Yeah.
It switched this time. Can you guys see that?
In South London.
Yes.
He's given our culture editor Matthew Kane an exclusive tour.
The studio is, in a way, a place of experimentation. More than a way, it is a place of experimentation. It isn't a factory. It's about kind of allowing things to emerge. There's one here, in fact, which is the beginnings of an idea for a new waxwork. With so much depending on interaction with the viewer, how do you know that things like this ultimately going to work? You don't. Until you don't. The whole point, in a way, of any work that properly involves the viewer is that you can't enact it until you make it for real.
Anish Kapoor creates work on a variety of scales and using a variety of materials. His studio in South London is based in the former shutter factory. Each adjoining warehouse is now dedicated to a different area of his practice.
Let's just go in here for a sec. It's a spray, this is a spray booth, and a work just ready to be painted. What I'm after is not dissimilar to what's happening there now, though it's grey. It is a kind of inner reflective condition. It's one, when you close your eyes and sit quietly, you kind of know that dark space in itself.
And do you think a figurative piece could do the same thing, or is it only abstract art that has the ability to do this?
I'm interested in abstract art because I think its route to meaning is much more poetic.
Working with Anish Kapoor are a total staff of 20, many of them studio assistants. These provide technical expertise for his work with materials such as cement. What did you make of David Hockney's comments earlier this year when he had a go at Damien Hirst for relying so heavily on assistants? Because presumably for the technical knowledge, you really need to rely on the expertise of yours.
Look, I think this is a kind of, in a way, I think a ridiculous point. Artists, if I don't know, Michelangelo is a possible example. All the artists of the Renaissance had many assistants. It depends on what you're trying to do. David, bless him, is a painter. Painters just don't need assistants in the same way that sculptors do. I've been making mirror pieces, mirror works for quite a while. Perceptually, they are very confusing. It's as if one's looking at space kind of tumbling into itself.
You're interesting as an artist in that your work equally appeals to the art world and the general public. Do you have a particular kind of viewer that you're more concerned with communicating with?
In the art world, traditionally, we are suspicious of the so-called, of popularity, of the so-called big public. But I think one can do both, and that's in a way the job.
But at the same time, you do acknowledge that there are dangers inherent in trying to communicate to a wide public.
Inevitably. There is, Disneyland is just a short distance away. So I think there is this difference in a way between a serious intent and an intent that points towards entertainment.
The final room in Anish Kapoor's studio is a gallery space where finished work can be viewed. I think if I were really sad and I were looking at this, it would accentuate my sadness. But today I'm quite happy. And it feels to me like a happy piece.
So therefore I think what you're saying is that maybe it's not possible or necessary to put those kinds of subtle feelings into words. That what one says is, you register that there's something going on. You can't quite name it. I think that not being able to name it properly or adequately is part of the magic of the work. So why rob it of its magic?
Bear with me 1 second. I'm trying to figure this one out.
I think it's always really interesting to see an artist in his studio.
Yes, and that's why I created it, because it, Judy and I discussed this, and we were like, to see an artist in their studio gives them kind of it gives you a peek into their world and their making process, and how the space reflects them. It really does. Judy, your studio reflects you. It does. There's color and everything is white. On every surface until she splatters paint on it, and mine is half of the walls are covered in books. So it creates there's a variety of things that the studio creates.
And I just wanted to say something that over the years, as I've seen artists in their studios, I've learned a lot about ways to set things up to work better. Not somebody of this caliber, but just, like Robert Burridge, because it tells you a lot. So anyway.
Yeah, no, his studio is actually, it's in like an old warehouse in London. So it goes on and on and on and on. And each section, like you saw, was dedicated to a different thing. And I know that a lot of us have that in our studios, where you have like, this is the space where I make a mess here. This is the space where I print here. This is, you know, that kind of thing. But this piece here is is actually one of my favorites. And it was one of the reasons why I wanted to do and talk about Anish Kapoor. Judy suggested him, and I was like, yeah, I love Sky Mirror. So this piece is currently on display in Norfolk, England. It is one of many. It is made out of polished steel and worth about £9 million.
Wow.
A lot of money.
Wow.
But the London studio that you saw, this was not fabricated there. This was actually fabricated in Finland, which is different than.
That's very cool, isn't it?
Yeah. I love the fact that this concave surface is reflected enough, or it's angled enough just so that it catches the sky. And of course, the sky is upside down in it because it's the shape of the bowl. But you can watch birds fly by, the clouds move slowly, and you try and look in the direction that you thought the bird went. It was actually going the other way. But it also becomes this void. And the void form is something that shows up a lot. And you're going to see some more of them. Not only is it the void, but it's also the circle. And the kind of like falling into an environment. Sometimes some people literally fall into the environment. But so this one's actually, an interesting fact is it's guarded around the clock because they don't want people to touch it. Yeah. Judy, do you have anything on this one?
The thing that's interesting to me about this is it's constantly changing. So it's not a static sculpture like the one on the right is, but that's because of all these reflective surfaces. They're always changing depending on what's happening in the room or in where the environment. And that adds another element to sculpture, like Calder, when he did his stables that moved and the things that hung from the ceiling. So it was sculpture, but it had movement to it.
So the next slide, are you guys seeing one slide or two slides at the same time?
Two.
Of course you are. Okay.
Two.
All right.
That's one.
Now you got one. Okay, so this is the second one that Judy was talking about. Now, the reason I have this in here is because he likes to use different environments. And we go from an environment where it is in the natural world, and he's using the natural world as a color, as a catalyst, as an action. And then going to ones that are put into a very sterile gallery space. And these pieces are just as big. They're not, they're not small pieces made out of the same polished steel concept. This was from the Listen Gallery in New York in 2019. It closed in December, so my guess is it's probably still in New York. And the gallery work, he's done a number of shows with this gallery. It seems to be the gallery that does represent him in New York City. And there's a video that you can go and find on YouTube of people actually interacting and walking through this exhibit, and the way that they are just, reflected in all the surfaces.
Do you want to tell them about how the one on the left, the circle, is hung?
Oh yeah, okay, so to give you guys, I was trying to find a picture with people in it. I'm trying to find like relation. This one, I didn't really have one, but that circle, the one that is on the wall, is at eye height. So that'll give you an idea of the size of the pieces.
Cut out. That's the wall behind it. No.
Oh.
I don't know if it was reflective. It looks like a beach scene there, doesn't it?
And this one is, this is Cloudgate, also known as the Bean. And this is a seamless shape. You can walk around it, you can touch it, you can go up to it. You can walk around, under, but it just kind of it sits there. And I brought this one up, not because it's, you know, because it's what it is, but because of his placement in it. It's at the top of these steps in Millennial Park in Chicago. And it became, and it still is very iconic of the area. And I don't know if that was because of the size. And if you notice, his pieces are getting bigger and bigger as I'm showing you them. The sky mirror was about 15 feet across. The pieces in the Listen Gallery are about 10, 12 feet tall. This one, using those people for scale, yeah, you can guess how big that one is. I don't know the exact dimensions, actually, is what I'm getting at. But it's big.
Can you imagine putting that in place? Any of these?
Yeah. I think this one, along with that rock that they suspended over to a gap, that all of these, they had to actually like shut down roads and bring it in because it was brought in one piece. All wrapped up.
Wow.
So this is Leviathan. This is actually another one of my favorites. And this is an inflatable piece. And he used a type of PVC that was the light from the Grand Palace in Paris, the light shone through and you could actually go inside. And it's over 100 feet tall. It was installed in 2011, and it was an invitational. They invited him for moment number 4, and this is the group invited him to do this. So it was a challenge. So I mean, what do you do with a challenge like this? Do you take it and make something small, or do you make something that is on such a grand scale and challenging that it blows people's minds? And I think that he succeeded in this one. I hope you guys agree. He said about this one, a single object, a single form, a single color. My ambition is to create a space within a space that responds to the height and luminosity of the nave of the Grand Palace. Visitors will be invited to walk inside the work to immerse themselves in color. And it will, I hope, to be a contemplative and poetic experience.
And Elizabeth and I were talking about, if that's an inflated piece, how does it stay inflated if people can go in it? So that's that's the question. How do you make it do what you want it to do?
Yeah, we aren't quite sure where the door is, but we do know that people did go inside. And people would go up to it and push on it. It's a giant inflated piece. You thought the people's snowmen in their front yards were kind of crazy. This is beyond. All right. So these are some new pieces that he's worked on that are, for lack of a better word, very messy and very red. He's always been a fan of red, the color. You can see it in the Leviathan, and then you can see it in these pieces. This is a mix of Vaseline, oil pigment, and machinery. So the one in the center actually spins slowly, creating the shape. and the one down coming out of the doorway actually extrudes through a track, and that is the shape of the doorway. I'm going to show you a video that'll give you more of an idea. But he's working with the concept that the spaces and the wax and the movement is making the shape itself, is creating. So, here. See if we can get it to play. All right, tell me if you guys can see this. Yes, Judy?
My vision
Yeah, that's perfect.
is not fully formed. I think the whole notion of being, being an artist today is that it is a kind of discovery, and that one takes on different but related sets of ideas. One of them here, of course, is color. There's much color in the show, and I've always worked with color in different ways. I'm interested in it because the way I've come to it is to think of color as being stuff. It's not just surface, in other words. It's stuff, and it's that sort of interplay between the physicalness of it and a sense that actually it's rather illusory. It's rather elusive. We're watching this big block pass through the gallery. It's a bit like a monochromatic painting, sort of slowly making its journey through the gallery. Again, with this work here, I've given it a Sanskrit title, which is the word swayam. Swayam meaning auto-generated, self-made. It's a kind of fiction at one level. That the passage through these galleries of this big block that's bigger than the doors, as it moves through, it sort of sculpts itself. It oozes and pushes itself through the galleries, giving it the form that is the doorways. The implications of that are that it's making itself, it's doing its own thing. That I'm not involved. Of course, I am involved, but I chose the red. I made the process, but then I try and leave it alone. The process reveals all that's needed to be revealed. In a way, I feel I'm not trying to say something, but to let it occur. And that's true of most of the works on the show. Because I make work for myself, and to try and pursue an idea. Perhaps when one's got a lot to say, there's less room for the viewer. And what I'm concerned to do is to say, no, actually, I've got nothing to say. Nothing much to say anyway, or as little to say as possible, and let the viewer find that space in themselves. And maybe that's a process that's has something to do with engagement. I don't believe in trying in the idea that one, as I say, I don't feel I have a message to give, a thing to say. So therefore, I'm not trying to illustrate a point. One makes the work one makes, and it's very what happens to it. Has to, if it's any good, it'll find a life for itself. It has to stand up for itself. I can't defend it endlessly.
Back again. Okay. So not only has he created ones that are very hard and structural and, dense metal, concrete, wax, he's also created these pieces that I view as a more, almost more spiritual in my view. This one is Ascension where he actually was dropping pigment into the Guggenheim. It is a he took 3 photographic prints from it. So it is part of an edition, but this one was the precursor to his work that he did as the representative for the UK, or for England, at the Venice Biennial, which is also called Ascension. And this piece took place, it was placed in one of the cathedrals in Venice. It's very different, I think. Now it is using pigment. It's being blown up and then pulled through that vent at the top. But the light hits it at different angles during different times. It's ramping up again. Just the sheer concept of building these is interesting too.
Yeah, the material has to be kept being resupplied.
Yeah.
I noticed that with the cannon and the wax. There were a bunch of wax cubes set over on the side.
And that cannon with the wax actually became a performance.
I bet.
The guy who was firing those cannons was actually doing so. He had, he was told to do it in a certain way. So he was wearing a suit, just of like, a single piece zipped up suit for protecting himself from the pigment. He didn't have gloves. There was a paper towel that he was supposed to go and wipe things down. It was very performance. And that actually was also part of the show at the Royal Academy of the Arts, where he had the piece that was going through the doorway. This is some of his earlier work, exhibited actually in Gallery F15 in Norway recently, in the past 2 years. You can see another sky mirror out in the back, but this pigment work, Judy, actually, you said you remember seeing some of it in Chicago?
No, not in Chicago. In a book somewhere, I saw, not this. What really interested me in Anish Kapoor in the beginning was this room that he did with a trough at the top, and the room was all white, and it had blue pigment that sifted down the wall and piled up on the floor. And it was another moving sculpture, but it was just the idea of pure pigment moving like that. And I was telling Elizabeth, having grown up in India, this kind of thing with the red and the piles of spices in the markets, it's an image that you see over and over, and you see it when you look at photographs of third world countries. So I don't know if that had anything to do with why he does this, but I just thought it was an interesting kind of
It is an interesting connection.
Yeah.
Do we know? Who knows? Because he doesn't actually admit to any of that. He did come from a more of a privileged Indian background.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that he didn't see the marketplaces.
No.
So this will lead into his use of color and his use of color as creating void or space, and creating color as, like he was saying, color is a thing. It's a form. It's not just a surface, not a skin. So this is an article about his descent into limbo. This piece is actually installed in a garden in Portugal, and it is it's painted in this black that he uses called Vanta black, and it's so black that that all light pretty much is absorbed. It's like 99.9% of light. And it uses, it was, you know, it's so disconcerting that you're looking into the void and looking into the space. Now, some gentleman decided that he thought it was just a circle on the ground, and stepped in to it and found that it was actually an 8-foot deep pit, painted black. He was fine. He got to go to the hospital, but he was okay after that. Since then, I'm pretty sure that they have either had a more attentive guard or a fence around this piece. But it was a really kind of an interesting play on how to negate depth and create depth all at the same time. And they, the designers of Vanta Black say it's the closest thing to staring into the black hole. A black hole, is that what it is, Judy?
Yeah, that you'll ever get.
Yeah. And this started a bit of a feud because Anish Kapoor decided that he was going to buy the artistic rights to use Vanta Black. It is a spray paint. That was, if you remember when they were looking in his studio at the guy who was spraying in the studio, in the spray room, he was probably spraying Vanta Black in there. And he's Anish Kapoor is the only artist who's allowed to use it. Well, Stuart Semple took some, was not really thrilled by this. There were a number of people who were not thrilled, but Stuart took it a little farther than just complaining about it and created pigments for anyone to use.
This is one.
Huh? Yeah, Judy has some of them. And he created, the first one was a pink, and then next one was a black, and these were acrylic paints. They're both pigments and paints, but anyone can buy them except Anish Kapoor. And you actually have to, like, you know, sign something that says that you are not Anish Kapoor and you're not going to give it to him.
Yeah, there's a whole thing about that.
But it kind of got blown out of proportion, but it was one of those like funny stories that someone just latched onto. But down in the bottom corner, you can see the difference. Those two heads are the same bronze sculptures, and one is painted in Vanta Black and one is just the bronze. And that black one, there's nothing. You can't really, there's hardly any of the highlights that you usually would see because it absorbs that light so well.
That's a nanotechnology, which is something that's being used in a lot of different applications.
Yeah, it actually uses carbon nanotubes, which are teeny tiny little pieces of carbon that are aligned in such a way that they hold on to the light rather than reflect it.
Yeah, it's structurally it is let's see, nano black. They're carbon nanotubes grown on a substrate, so the light goes in, but it doesn't come back out. And there are a number of companies that make something that's similar to this Vanta Black, like Stuart Semple made something. And it's being used in architecture, on buildings.
It was one of the Olympic pavilions. They used it on a car, which I would think would be kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
But
Well,
all right, so that's the end of this, and I'm going to unmute everyone so we can all talk. And here we go. Hey everyone.
Hi. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Good.
Some dog likes that.
So we have, it's a little different setup than our usual salon style. I wanted it to be a little more informative. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
That's great.
Yeah, very good.
Very good.
Good.
Good job.
Judy
Kat,
Lee, Elizabeth, Judy Lee's still muted.
Oh.
I think it's in the bottom, Judy.
me,
No,
Judy Lee's.
Judy's turn.
There it is.
okay. And Kathy.
We can't see you.
No, I am here though. Can you hear me?
Here we go.
Hi.
We can hear you.
That's
Can we-
good. I've just got a black screen now.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
It's
Has
small.
anybody ever seen any of his work in person?
I saw it at Art Basel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to say something about this.
So this is a piece that Judy actually did see at Art Basel too.
Oh, I didn't see this one. I saw
A variation of.
yeah, this one. I made a scrapbook of all the stuff I saw at Art Basel. But this is a print. This is printed. And I was talking to the thing is huge. It's probably maybe 30 inches wide and 24 inches high at least. And it looks like a book, and it was $60,000.
What is it made out of?
It's paper and it's printed. And I talked to a master printer about it, and I think I know how it was done. And he thinks he knows how it was done, but he's not sure, because the only way you could do something is to create a plate that has minuscule, because you can't even see, it looks like powder was dropped on it, but it's printed, it's an etching. And so it's like process I can never think of.
Aquatint.
Thank you very much. Aquatint. But it must have been done commercially to get such a teeny weeny little texture. And it was printed by a very skilled company that prints things like that. But it was breathtaking. There were two of them hanging there.
Yeah, he has a whole series of these colored ones. And it's
Yeah. And it's interesting that a lot of artists do prints of some kind somewhere in their careers. So.
I think you're right that it must be Aquatint, because the editions are so small. There's only 20 in the edition, and after a while, the tooth on those just kind of degraded. So,
But it's probably done on steel. So anyway.
that would be pretty. But yeah. All right. So we had one question from Danielle, which was, what portion of his work is installed outdoors versus in the gallery? And that's a good question. A lot of his steel pieces, they end up probably about half and half end up in either in a home or outside. The larger pieces, like those, the sky mirror, for the most part, are outside. But the ones that you saw like on the wall at his studio, in his studio space, the ovoids, Those are inside. Also the freestanding ones, some of them he puts inside and some of them he puts outside. He had one that went to Japan and went to, and then from Japan it went to Moscow. And in Japan, it was inside in a white room filled with chairs, so people were looking at it. And it was this big black cube that had the floor of the PVC kind of stretched around it, so it created these holes that went through. I think I have a picture if you guys want to see it. Would that be of interest? Yeah. Okay. And then when it went to Moscow, it was outside in the middle of a field. So his pieces have been found in industrial settings. They've been found in galleries. They've been found in homes and outdoors. And I'm not even sure if they. I don't know what the exchange of, like, one goes where or whatever.
It's cool that you mentioned the what was it, the step into Limbo was then installed in a garden after the gallery.
The Leviathan?
No, the Limbo piece, the step.
Oh,
the hole in the ground.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's actually, that one stays there, and then he's made a couple others. Most of these pieces, just like the Sky Mirror and other ones, he has replicated in multitude, in variations of size, color. But if he finds one thing that he enjoys, he will make it again and again and again.
Do you have any examples of some smaller pieces that would fit in somebody's home?
Yes, actually, he just had an exhibit about with smaller pieces in, I think, the Listen Gallery in New York. Let me see. All right, Judy, talk, and I will. I'll see if I can pull that up.
Okay. Well, what really fascinated me about his work was the color, of course. Yeah. And I wasn't that conversant with his sculptures. Of course, I knew about the one in Chicago, but I was talking to Elizabeth that a few months ago we did a salon about Sir Anthony Gormley, who did the figures that are in the water, and to me there is somewhat of a correlation, because Kapoor is about where you are in space and how you perceive it. And it's the same thing with Gormley. It's about inner space and outer space. And those images, it's stunning. And to me, anyway. And he does these figures of himself in different metals, and they are placed in the water, in the mountains, on rocks. And how I came to be aware of him was he did an installation at Delos, which is an island in Greece, which has really never been done before because it's a World Heritage Site, and the Greek government is very, very protective of it. But I'm seeing similarities in odd ways, like with James Turrell and what light does, and Richard Serra scale. I saw a Richard Serra show at MoMA a few years ago, and I was walking, it was inside on the second floor, these huge, heavy, big things. And I was walking between these two pieces, and it was like being in Canyonlands in the West. So, you know, they're evocative of place in some way, even if it may be inner space or outer space or the void.
You guys see my screen again?
Yes.
What?
Yeah. So this one is like kind of Richard Serra-esque.
Yeah.
The walls. This is the one that I was talking about, that, you know, you kind of have these voids into it.
That's cool.
Which is very female to me.
It is definitely very female.
Giant red speakers.
Yeah.
And he did some in clear.
Oh.
Hey. Okay, so this one is, he has variations on this style, and they were smaller. They were probably about this big.
Wow.
Okay. How big?
Probably about 12 inches.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah, this one is not, but this one is
Is that glass or lucite?
stainless steel, polished.
Oh, that's stainless steel?
Yes.
Oh, that's incredible. Does he just bend it, do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, these are most likely all fabricated in that same shop up in Finland.
Oh,
Here's another one where he's colored the stainless steel.
oh, that's a beautiful color.
It's a
Oh, look at that.
rich piece.
Oh, well, that's like taffy.
Mhm.
Sorry, I can't find that exhibit. I did have it somewhere. But. Okay, what else? Does anyone else have any other questions? Chat.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I'm sorry I came in late, and I had a question that you may have addressed already. I was just wondering what or who were his muses?
Okay. Yeah, we had I got that email from you, and thank you for being here to answer it and to ask it. I think for me, I feel that his muses are still the environment and also the medium that he's working with. I think he gets fascinated by the effect that he can get. Going back to the mirrored ones where he can literally turn the world upside down. And he always says that he's not trying to have a complete message, that the viewer should figure it out on their own. I'm not sure if that's quite the best thing for an artist to saying like, okay, well, I'm just gonna let the viewer figure it out. I'm not gonna talk about it. Like, that's a cop out. But what I did find in that was that he said, in the end, I'm talking about myself and thinking about making nothing, which I see as a void. But then that's something, even though it really is nothing. How's that, Judy?
That's good, Elizabeth.
Good.
So thank you for sending that question to me early, Judy Lyons. It helps so much.
That's good.
Yeah.
Judy, I really liked what you mentioned about the spices in the market too. Just thinking about using pure pigment in the spice form.
Yeah.
Really relates to not only the color he ends up with, but those lighter, softer, flowing pigment pieces. I think that's interesting.
And it's really his pigment pieces. He doesn't do anything but primary. You see black, white, red, and a cobalt blue usually.
HOLI. And they throw, I mean, it's just heaven. They throw colors, colored powder in it. Some of it is toxic, so it's not a real safe environment. But there are these pictures of people just covered in colored powder. So of course I had to order some. And I got organic. But the colors are spectacular. But the powder itself, I've worked with powdered pigments for years. I have never seen anything that was so light.
Yeah,
And
the way that it like lifted in that scene was really exciting.
Yeah, it just billows. And other pigment, because of what it is, it's heavier. But this is amazing. And a friend of mine who worked with dyes for a long time, she said you have to make a box and you spray it with water when you're using this stuff, when you're transferring it, and you put it in whatever container in there, because the box with the wet will catch the extra powder. But I mean, I've been wanting to go out in the side garden and throw that on a non-windy day.
He might be reaching back to his Indian heritage with that, because, you know, there is that Indian holiday called Holi in December where they throw colored water at the crowd.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, that was it. And colored powder and colored water.
Yeah.
So just, you know, I've given you a small sample of his work. I'm just kind of curious what some adjectives that you guys are kind of like, when you think of it, how would you describe his work?
Jeff Koons kind of comes to mind with me.
Hmm?
I'm just wondering if Jeff Koons was the first thing I thought of when I saw his very large polished sculptures, stainless steel polish. I wonder who was the earliest contemporary artist to become famous for this polished stainless steel balloon-like sculptures. Was Jeff Koons before Anish or after, or?
Good question.
That's a good question, and I don't know. I
think
know that
with the blow up thingies, I think.
Yeah, a lot of Jeff Koons sculptures.
When did Koons, if Koons started that in the 70s, then he came first, but they
He just got 91 million for one of his blow up sculptures.
Right.
Last year, he did. And I'm just wondering if he was the first, or if Anish was, or if there are many others using this
my
process.
guess is that they may have all come out around the same time, just because the technology may have been developed at that point, that they could then make these highly polished, highly stylized and specific shapes.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeff Koons' pieces are cast.
Because of that technique, they would have to be very simple shapes.
Exactly.
But they are certainly in another league from anything that we could do, even though we could make a model. But, you know, being able to afford to do something in such a grandiose style.
And just FYI, I was reading something yesterday, and his net worth is $700 million.
Wow.
So he can afford to make anything he wants.
When they were probably first starting with this reflective surface and that kind of stuff, there was a lot of development in the sciences too. The Hubble telescope and that to create a highly mirrored surface that is almost free of imperfections. So it was kind of that neat melding of engineering and science and art that we get so often with our sculptors.
Yeah.
For me, attribute-wise, it's like, okay, so those pieces that seem to like always stick in my head is the one that gets extruded through the doorway. I feel so bad for the people who have to clean up that. I was just like, I love the fact that it was pushing it through. It was like square originally, like big block, and pushing it through the doorway. And I can see like that happening at the Ringling Museum, and everyone is going to like, I just like love that the fact that it was permission, or I don't even know if he asked permission on that one. They're like, I'm just gonna do this, and they're like, okay, go for it. And I think that that's really what a lot of art is about, is that you're giving yourself permission, and two, you're giving that the world is giving you permission. And once you do it, the world has given you permission, and once they've seen it.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that he keeps pushing that boundary, and and he may be sticking to forms that he knows and going back to what will sell or whatever, but he keeps kind of challenging himself.
But he throws in something like the Ascension Sculptures are totally took me by surprise. They almost
I would not
made for Hollywood movie or something, but I thought that showed a different side of his creative, mind.
Yeah,
and I liked that.
Well, that one especially, when I first saw it, it screams very very feminine and very, very spiritual. And some of his other pieces, I don't look at, like some of the harder ones that are, a static cube or just like, a reflective ovoid. I don't really see as anything female or male or organic or anything like that. They just kind of are.
Right.
But some of his shapes, on the other hand, have that, again, that duality, the void, which gets repeated. The female form, he does have a whole, usually when he, in his shows, where if there are female forms, there are also male forms in it. He's done similar pieces with both rock and steel. So he's carved stone where they go in or they go out. And the same with like Corten steel, like Richard Serra does. It's really kind of fascinating. The more I was digging into his work, the more I'm like, this guy has done a lot. And he's had a team behind him, and he doesn't put any qualms to say that he's doing it by himself.
Well, and you look at Frank Stella, this huge body of work that he's done.
Right.
And he has people, I mean, his prints are just stunning.
Wow.
And how can you do that? Howard Hodgkin was the same. He had a crew when he printed. Some of his pieces have 14 in through the press 14 times. It's just, it's hard to do it on your own. And I was thinking,
so expensive. You have to pay your staff.
Yeah. I was thinking, somebody asked me last year, she said, why do you keep doing art? And I said, because I can't not do it. And I don't know where it's going. I don't have a staff, people buy it once in a while, but it's not about that. And I think I have a couple of friends who work in other artistic disciplines. And, what is it? Is it selfish to do what I want to do? But somewhere it's putting out something that somebody might enjoy or not. But I think of that fairly often. Is it selfish to just do this? And it's better than shopping online.
We can all share that thought process, believe me. It's like,
I know, yeah. But, we all have something unique to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if
that's the important part of being an artist. I think if you're going to be on like my level and just produce, you have to be saying something. That's the way I feel anyway. Otherwise, it just becomes after a while, I think.
Well, and I don't know about you guys, but I think it's true, is I just keep trying these different things because they're fascinating to me. And sometimes I throw them away and sometimes I don't. Yeah. It's like Elizabeth gave me a little bit of a medium it's a textured medium that was used in one of the workshops. And so I played with it, and you can do really interesting things after you apply it and it dries. You can wet it and then drop watered pigment into it, and it blooms, and it does just gorgeous stuff. Wow. I don't know where I do know where I'm going to use it. Yeah.
Well, and see, that's one of the things that's great is that, you know, they tell us, they would tell me in grad school that you know, you're supposed to find your medium and practice that and practice that and practice that until you had it down. And I was fascinated, and I still am, with so many different things. And my journey as an artist is putting all of those things that I'm fascinated in and pulling them all together into work, and saying that, you know, no, I don't just have to be a painter, or I don't have to be just a book artist. My work covers all sorts of different mediums, because that's how you choose to define my work. And I think that, you know, for some artists, it works well to focus on one thing, and the other artists, it works well to bounce from one to another. And Anish Kapoor is one of the artists who works in experiments in different media, and it inspires me.
Well, Robert Burridge said a couple of years ago in one of his workshops, he said, you know, he paints every day, and that just makes him very, very happy.
Yeah.
And so after I took the workshop, which I had taken numerous times, I came home and I painted every day for a week. And at the end of it, I realized this is not what I want to do every day. I want to do some other stuff. So it was very beneficial to learn that about myself. And we all have different stages, and we have to make accommodations because of different issues we have or are going through. So I think it's just really important to keep creating.
Yeah.
Don't worry about where it's going to go or what's going to happen to it. Just keep doing it, and it'll find a home.
Yeah. Danielle, you work primarily in oil, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And yours has been a very focused process.
Body of work. Yeah, absolutely.
I've done some sculpture, but for the most part, it was single-mindedly, you know, doing these oil paintings.
Well, like Judy said, we all have limitations. So I actually applied for school for ceramics and was working towards a degree in sculpture, and then attended New College, and there's no sculpture department. So then I became a painter.
Nice behind you. Are they new?
Yeah. No, those are from my thesis. Yeah, those are the old ones.
Nice.
But yeah, no, I mean, it definitely was practicing every day, but my curriculum was focused on what are you saying before you paint it. So of course you're working as you develop whatever style I will be working in, right? But we had to defend it at every process, from concept, idea stage until the finished project. So I think saying something is very important, but I also have a completely separate body of work that's just figure studies, so that I can continue to, you know, kind of meditatively just create and keep that going too. So. Yeah.
And ultimately, everybody brings their own thing to it when they see it.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can have this intent, but people will look at it and find something totally different.
Yeah, I think my work is very narrative, but I appreciate a lot of that abstract conceptual art because it's, you know, viewer focused. They're not describing everything.
And you might get there at some point.
Right. Yeah. No, if I do, I won't fight it. I just can't do it yet.
Things change.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, do you want to talk about the future?
Yes. So at this point, we have a couple different choices. Is there anyone who feels so inspired that they would love to be the next speaker at the next Salon?
Which is,
we're thinking in 2 weeks.
Because the Art Center is not open yet?
Because the Art Center is not open yet, thank you. And we want to provide an outlet and programming and all this kind of stuff, and Judy's filling in the other stuff that I talked about yesterday, so thank you. But I know, right? This is why we practiced.
Yeah.
We were gonna do it like, every week, and I think that's a little too much. It's a little more than I can handle. But we will be doing a book club on Monday. So I'm gonna send out the invite for that. The book is How to Be an Artist by Jerry Saltz. We'll be reading a chapter a week, and each chapter is like a paragraph. First one is Don't Be Embarrassed. We'll also be discussing that too. And I'll have different books that I suggest you look into, or different artists you might go and to inspire you, that kind of thing. But it's going to be a discussion. It's going to be informal, and it's going to be fun. And that will be at 2:00 on Mondays. But if no one has an idea of what they would like that we should talk about next time for Salon, then I have a suggestion, and you guys can say yay or nay on this one.
I have a question.
Yes.
How would we ever get to do the PowerPoint like you did it?
We can go back to the old way of doing it with a book.
We can, yes. Or you can send me images and I can put PowerPoint together. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Because he reminded me, I never can remember her name. There was a Japanese woman who likes to do these big rooms with mirrors in them, or balloons.
Yeah.
It's Japanese.
Yes.
It's a Japanese who lives in America.
No, she lives in an insane asylum, actually.
Oh, really?
In Japan.
What is her name? I know it too.
Where we get
Right?
it?
I know it too, I forget.
Right. I got it on the fridge. I can go get it.
The Infinity Rooms.
It's Yayoi Kusama.
Yeah.
It's her name.
And she's really not sane anymore?
Well, no, she finds that actually living in an asylum is better for her, both for her sanity, both for her mental stability, and both for her as an artist. So she chooses to live there.
That's very interesting.
Yes. Would you like to discuss her next week or next time?
Want to do it?
I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
Think about it for the time after this one, the next one.
Okay, I could do that.
Okay. Does anyone else have a topic that they would like to cover or talk about?
I do, but maybe the time after Judy Lee.
Okay.
I'm interested in talking about some of the more mystical female artists, people like Virginia Springford and let's see, Virginia Springford. What's the other one? I can't think by now, but in the same class.
No, that sounds great. I might have a couple to toss your way too.
Okay. The ones that were influenced by the Theosophists back in the 30s,
No, this would be, she was in the 80s, but.
No, Springford was back in the early part of the 20th century.
Oh, yes, nice.
She died in 1962 or something like that, I think. But she had a retrospective recently. I think that might be what you're thinking of.
Okay, all right. So I guess in 2 weeks, we will be talking about what?
Land art.
Land art, okay. To give you the idea of what land art is, Spiral Jetty is well known.
Virginia Dwan is the name I was trying to think.
Yes, Patricia, Andy Goldsworthy is one of my favorites.
Yes. And Andy Goldsworthy will be one that we will be touching on. Danielle, would you like to talk about him?
I'm okay. I've got a couple of studio visits that I have to monitor just like this. But Elizabeth, the couple who did the installation in the Keys with the large pink tarps that surrounded the miniature islands. What is that? Cristo? Is that what it is?
Yeah, John
Claude and Kristen.
Yes, yeah, those would be great. I love some of their wrapping work is really interesting.
They did these neat ones that were umbrellas through the California hills.
Yes.
And in Central Park.
And in New York, they did one in Central Park, I think, flags or.
Yeah, that you walked underneath, I think. Is that right, Joyce? Yeah.
I think so.
And a friend of mine, she got a little tiny square of it. She showed me.
Wow.
Actually, the neat thing is that they, well, I'll tell you, I'll explain that later next time. Okay, I do have some information on that.
So we're going to meet again in 2 weeks at the same time?
2 weeks. Yep.
Okay.
Great.
Elizabeth, you did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for doing this.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Stay safe, everybody. Good to see you.
Stay safe. Bye.
Bye.
Oh,